Hello, I'm Britt Udison, Executive and Artistic Director at the Loft Literary Center. Welcome to this live stream at Virtual Wordplay. I'm so glad you're here with us. Before we get started, I want to talk a little bit about what brought us here today. For the last year, the Loft staff has been working hard to put together an outdoor book festival that would have gathered 100 authors with 10,000 visitors in our neighborhood in downtown Minneapolis. As COVID-19 hit, we knew we had to think about everything we do differently, especially this festival. While we were disappointed that we wouldn't be able to gather in person, we became even more committed to supporting writers, celebrating new books, and finding new ways to assert the connective power of the written word. In a time of anxiety, we want to offer a powerful event for readers, writers, and booksellers. When we first approached our sponsors, their first question was, what is a virtual festival? And to be honest, we didn't know. Our founding partners, St. Catherine University and Star Tribune, agreed to make a leap of faith with the Loft. With courage, generosity, and vision, they have worked alongside us to figure out what this virtual festival might become. We are grateful to our sponsors and donors. Their generosity is incredible, but it is not enough. We believe it is essential, especially during a health and financial crisis, to offer programs that are free and accessible to all, but that has led to a significant revenue loss. A live event would have included ticket revenue, beer sales, exhibitor fees, and additional sponsorships. The Loft is not closed. We continue to offer classes, fellowships, conversations, support for readers and writers in addition to this festival. We are here to support the literary community, and we ask that you continue to support us. If you are able, please consider making a contribution to the Loft today. Thank you for being here.
Hello and welcome. My name is Caitlin. I work here at the Loft. Thank you for being part of this wordplay session. Today I am joined by author Sara Mesa and translator Katie Whittemore. They are the forces behind novel 4x4, and they will be in conversation with Open Letter Books publisher Chad Post. But before I introduce them, I want to take a moment to thank our presenting sponsors, St. Catherine University and Star Tribune. Thank you so much for making Wordplay possible. Wordplay is just one of many programs we offer year-round here at the Loft Literary Center. We offer everything from classes to fellowships, smaller events than Wordplay, writers' conference, and more. And you can check us out at loft.org for more information. Everything that the Loft does is made possible in part by the generosity of our wonderful members whose support sustains our arts programming year-round. So if you would like to help our community of readers and writers, please consider making a donation and becoming a member today. Lots of fun goodies come with that. You'll be setting off rainbow fireworks in our hearts. So this is the perfect time to support us. And to do that, you can just click the button below where it says support Wordplay. And you can also, at that link, buy a copy of 4x4 directly from our dear friends at Milkweeds Editions, local here in Minneapolis. And if you're watching somewhere that is not on the Crowdcast, there's also a link on that event page where you can check out those things. Finally, at the end of this conversation, we will be taking questions. So feel free to add those to the Ask a Question section in the comments below. And you can add those at any point during the talk. So, okay, well, it's my pleasure to introduce our crew today. Sara Mesa is the author of 8 works of fiction, including Scar, winner of the Ojo Critico Prize, 4x4, which is a finalist for the Herralde Prize, and Invisible Fire, winner of the Premio Málaga de Novela, and Cara de Pan, which is forthcoming from Open Letter. Her works have been translated into more than 10 different languages and have been widely praised for her concise, sharp writing style. And Katie Whittemore is the translator of 4x4. She's a graduate of the University of New Hampshire, Cambridge University, and Middlebury College, and was a 2018 Bread Loaf Translators Conference participant. Her work has appeared or is forthcoming in 2 lines, the Arkansas International, the Common, Gulf Coast, Los Angeles Review of Books, the Brooklyn Rail, and in translation. Whew. Current projects include novels by Spanish authors Sara Mesa, Javier Serena, Aliocha Cole, Aroa Moreno Duran, and Nuria Lavari. And finally, last but not least, Chad Post is the publisher of Open Letter Books, a translation-focused independent publisher, creator of 3% Blog, which is devoted to conversations about work in translation, and founder of the Best Translated Book Award. You may be sensing a theme here. 4x4 is one of Open Letter Books' most recent titles. So without further ado, I am going to turn it over to Chad. And yeah, thank you so much to all of you for being here.
Thanks, Caitlin.
Yeah, I want to just thank you guys too. Thank Wordplay for putting this together and for inviting us to participate in this way. So thanks, Abby, Caitlin, Steph, everyone who's working at the Loft and working on this great conference. And thank everyone for coming here. And thank you two for participating in this. Was initially going to be an in-person part of our long, winding tour, but now we're here in this space and we'll make the best of it. So I want to say one thing at the start is that I'm the only one of us that has a finished copy of 4x4, which is making this kind of weird. All of the copies of this book that were delivered to our press are in my daughter's bedroom right now, and we can't mail anything. So I have this, you guys don't, which is unfortunate, but still, it's a great book. It is available from all the bookstores. You can get it from Milkweed. You can get it anywhere. It's out in the world now. And it's a book that's one of my all-time favorites that we're publishing. I love this book since the second I started reading about it. I've loved the process of being able to edit it, work on it, and get it out into the world. All the attention that's been getting is fantastic. It's something I'm very proud of and very happy to share with you two. So for everyone watching, what we're going to do here is Sarah's going to read from the beginning of the book. It's the book that's set up into 3 sections. And she's going to read from the very beginning, which is no more than 200. Is that the right title? Yeah, never more than 200. And then Katie will sort of recap what part 1 is, and then read from part 2, A Substitute's Diary, and she'll read in English. And then we'll go back and forth with some questions. Sarah will be speaking in Spanish, Katie will be speaking in English. I will try and understand everyone. We may try and recap answers if possible. And we're just going to do the best we can. So, Sarah, do you want to start by reading the beginning of 4x4?
Okay. Thank you very much. I am very happy to be now with. It's my turn, or it's yours?
Yes,
okay.
Your turn.
My turn?
Yeah.
Yes. Okay. I'm going to speak in Spanish because my English is very bad. I'm going to read the first pages of 4x4. This is the Spanish edition. The American edition is more beautiful. I have to say. Y voy a leer ya en español la primera parte que está estructurada que se titula Celia. La línea del paisaje se curva, amarillea, baja hasta disolverse en la distancia y ahí estamos al fin, detenidas y resoplando bajo el cielo inmóvil. Es febrero y todavía hace frío. El aire corta la respiración, ataca los pulmones de la Poquita, que está enferma desde hace semanas. Nunca habíamos llegado tan lejos. Tenemos los zapatos chorreando de pisotear la hierba fangosa por evitar los caminos. Esperamos que la poquita nos alcance y hacemos asamblea. ¿Desayunamos ya?, pregunta Valen. Le tiemblan las mejillas regordetas. Valen siempre tiene hambre. Pero las demás protestamos. No es hora de comer. Si hemos parado aquí es para decidir hacia dónde continuar a partir de ahora. No hay tiempo que perder. Desayunaremos más adelante mientras caminamos. O no desayunaremos en absoluto. Las dos opciones son remontar la colina hasta la carretera o bajar la cuesta de la derecha tratando de encontrar el río. Decir río es quizá exagerar. La memoria nos devuelve una estría pintada de marrón que es, como mucho, arroyo. La memoria tampoco nos define su lugar exacto. Hace años que nadie pasa por aquí. Yo iría a la carretera, luego hacemos autostop y hasta donde nos dejen. Osada cuando habla y cobarde cuando actúa, Marina no nos convence. Me elevo. Autostop, estás loca. Nos llevarían de vuelta al instante. El río es más seguro, dice Christy. Pero si no sabemos dónde está, dice Marina. Christy se encoge de hombros. Valen insiste, llevándose la mano a la mochila. Podríamos comer algo mientras pensamos. ¿Qué dices tú, Poquita?, le pregunto. Levanta la cabeza. Sus ojos legañosos bizquean. Tiene los cristales de las gafas empañados. Tose de nuevo, tose y bizquea sin parar. Moquea. Está llena de humedad en la Poquita. Yo ni siquiera espero a que responda. Hablo por ella. A la Poquita le da igual lo que hagamos, siempre que hagamos algo pronto. Estar aquí paradas con este frío va a terminar de matarla. Creo que comer le sentaría bien, dice Valen. Calla, gorda grasienta, dice Christy. Pelean. Primero con insultos, luego se echan sobre la tierra mojada a revolcarse teatralmente como sin ganas. Marina las jalea, no se sabe bien de qué parte se pone. La Poquita y yo esperamos, ella sin pensar en nada y yo tratando de pensar en todo. De nada vale. Los veo llegar en el todoterreno, por el estrecho camino polvoriento. Vienen hacia nosotras y nosotras estamos ahí, detenidas, tan detenidas como el tiempo. Mi vanidad se siente espoleada. Pensar en una bronca de la culo o en un castigo del director hace que me sienta mejor. Una perdiz piñonea a lo lejos. Valen y Christy se levantan, se sacuden la ropa, me miran a los ojos. Ninguna dice nada, pero sé que me culpan. Fin.
Good. Thank you very much. That's spectacular. It's great to hear you read that.
The dialogue, dialogues? How do you say dialogue?
The dialogue.
Dialogue. It's very difficult to read.
Yes, yes. You did great. You did great.
Okay.
Katie, do you want to recap a bit of like what the first section, how it's set up and what its structure is and how it differs from the part that you're going to read so that people have a sense of what the whole book is like? We've sort of skipped by describing it in any way, but it's a book that is about a private school where the elites send their kids to be safe from like essentially a falling apart society. And they're in the school and the school has a lot of sinister sort of aspects to it. But I'll let you take over since you've worked on this for years and you know what it's all about.
Okay, thanks. Yeah, so the novel, it opens with 5 girls that have, they're on a little excursion away from the school, and they're trying to get to Cardenas, which is the city, and they're on foot, and basically they've fled the school. This is an unauthorized field trip that they've taken for themselves. And here we have the setup of some of the main characters, some of the children at the school, and they're young teens. And Celia is sort of the ringleader of this group. She's a scholarship student. So what you find set up is that the children of the elites are joined by a small group of scholarship students whose parents work at the school. And then, you start to find sort of like the nefarious ways that those scholarship students are or are not integrated in Wybrany College's program. So the girls they're making off for the city. They're arguing. We start to see some of their personalities forming. And just as they're deciding which way they should go toward the city, a car appears in the distance, and it's the it's, huh? I'm thinking in Spanish now after hearing Sarah read this section. Yeah, so it's people from the school, and the girls are caught. They're caught, and Celia knows that they blame her for what's going to happen to them. Oh, and the next part. So the next part, well, basically in part one, so the chapters alternate between first person recounting by Celia, the scholarship student, and also there's like a third person omniscient narrator who is kind of talking from the perspective of a young student, Ignacio, a boy. And so we really kind of get to see into the minds of the school's inhabitants, both students and the faculty and the administration. And then in the second part of the novel, it's the diary kept by a substitute teacher who is he's an imposter. He is not an actual educator. He's a failed and wannabe writer who has sort of taken over this position from his ex-brother-in-law. And what we have to understand is that we don't really know what's going on or why, but the world outside is in decay. It's in decline. The cities are becoming more and more violent, and people are trying to sort of escape and find places to go. So this position at the school seems like a safe place for him to go. And his voice is sort of, he's pretty overblown. He's very self-absorbed. We remember he's a wannabe writer. This is his diary. So the voice that we have here is someone who kind of fancies himself an intellectual. And here he is at the school without any knowledge of how to deal with being a teacher. Shall I read? Yeah? Okay. So this is the first entry in part two, Substitute's Diary. And I have to move this because I have my phone on my computer. Okay. Sunday, November 12th. I arrived at the college yesterday. By the time I'd finally found it, night had fallen. I confess, I'm a terrible driver, especially on unfamiliar roads. I made my first mistake at the detour on the highway and had to turn around and start over. Later, I drove down a dirt road through a pine tree forest. I drove slowly, uncertainly. I switched on my high beams, blinding a few rabbits. I heard the cry of a bird. I don't know which kind. I finally reached the end of the road, hungry and disoriented. My disconcertion was compounded by the total darkness. Apparently, everyone here turns in early. Silhouettes of stone buildings stood among the shadows, not as large as I would have expected, but ornate and pretentious, like from another time. I was met at the gate by a woman wearing an apron, her head bowed. She seemed to expect me because she didn't ask for my name or reason for being there. She simply murmured, "Follow me," and led me to my room in a stone dormitory building on the left side of the property. The room is spare but comfortable enough. Double bed, mounted TV, desk with a swivel chair, prints of contemporary art on the wall. I tried the internet connection and it seemed to work fine. I considered taking a shower, but I didn't know where to find the bathroom, and the woman in the apron disappeared without giving me any instructions. I put my clothes in the closet and got into bed, still dressed and without any dinner. Unusual for me, I fell fast asleep. I can't quite remember it today, but I had a strange dream that kept me engrossed the whole night. I was awoken this morning by the ringing of a telephone I hadn't noticed on the nightstand yesterday. A cordial female voice summons me to a meeting in 1 hour. A welcome meeting, she specifies. I look at the clock. It's only 8 a.m. and a Sunday too. The sun has barely risen. I can see a well-tended garden through the window with tall hedges, the vestiges of the night's fog. I realize I will have to adapt to a different schedule. I've peered into the hallway and seen other doors just like mine, but none appear to be a bathroom. I have no idea where to wash up, do my business. I've been forced to urinate in a plastic bottle, which I've stashed behind the nightstand. I've wiped the sleep from my eyes with a tissue, and now I write as I wait for the meeting. I'll know more soon. ... I met Senor J, and I still don't know what to make of him. The headmaster of the college looks more like a shareholder than a head of school. It's hard to explain, but there's something about his air, like a smug businessman, instead of someone responsible for educating the young. A self-satisfied, relaxed man, Pleasant expression, deep, confident voice, a graying goatee that he strokes now and then. From behind round glasses, he gives me a look that could be either kind or condescending. He shakes my hand and welcomes me enthusiastically. I'm suddenly put at ease. The assistant headmaster is also at the meeting, skinny and pale with dark circles under his eyes. He's submissive to Senor J, eager to please. No firm handshake from him, just a limp and non-committal grasp. He smiles broadly, showing long yellowed teeth. He's friendly, but it's an awkward friendliness. Fixed eyes, stiff expression. I couldn't tell whether he liked me or not. Our conversation is brief. I have the impression they both think I know all about the school already, or maybe they don't want to bore me with superfluous explanations early on. They limit themselves to giving me precise instructions. The assistant headmaster gives me a folder with my student files, the notebook of the teacher I'm replacing, a copy of my contract, and a flash drive. You start tomorrow, he adds. I go ahead and ask what happened to the teacher on leave. I need to calculate how long I'll be able to work here, but I don't want to seem rude, so I murmur the question. The assistant headmaster makes a slight evasive gesture with his hand. I'm not even sure he's heard me. Things being what they are, I don't press. Then Senor J opens one of the large windows, offers me a cigar, which I turn down, and smokes leisurely, leaning against the wall. It's obvious he's scrutinizing me, but I'm not intimidated. I would have happily accepted a coffee. The sun has finally risen, and I still haven't eaten since yesterday afternoon. I worry my stomach is growling. I worry about my bad breath and whether they've noticed it. What should I do? Ask them where I could get some breakfast around here? What I have to do to take a shower, to brush my teeth? What I finally do: stand up, thank them, say goodbye, and leave, closing the door behind me. I have the urge to press my ear against the door. Are they discussing me? Or is bringing a new teacher on board just another part of the routine? I return to my room and put all the material I've received in its place. Then I wait without knowing what for. I wait a good long while. I don't keep track of the time, maybe an hour, maybe two. I write in this journal. My hunger pangs grow stronger. The college fills with sounds. I still haven't eaten. Fortunately, there are more plastic cups in my room. I pee in another one and hide it along with the first, which has already started to stink. Through the window, I see several students heading out to play sports. Impeccable, tidy boys bursting with health, running down the fields with their shiny hair, cheering each other on. Farther away, I make out a group of girls accompanied by a huge cinnamon-colored dog. I can't see anything else, given both the distance and my nearsightedness. At the moment, I feel isolated and sad.
Which is a perfect ending point for our quarantine life right now.
Yes, isolated and sad.
But related to that, we read this book for my class, and one of the students that absolutely loved it was the first to point this out, where she said that on page, in one of his journal entries, the one for November 19th, he has this line that she said it hit her right close to home. All this time in my room, all this TV and all this solitude is affecting the quality of my skin and maybe my spirit. She's like, that is the perfect line for everyone at this moment. One of the things that I really love about this book and about all of the books I've read of yours, Sarah, is the way that they're constructed. We didn't give this, I don't want to give away too much about how this book functions as a whole, because I want people to read it and I don't want to spoil it. But there's a really interesting construction of what goes on in the first part, and then jumps ahead in time to the second part, and you see how things have evolved with different characters. And then the third part of this book is a philosophical writing that kind of brings it all together. And so it's really fascinating. All the structures of your books are fascinating. But what I was wondering if you could answer for me is how you came to write this particular book, 4x4, and how it fits in with the rest of your oeuvre, your writings.
Bueno, Katy, has leído muy bien. me sonaba mejor de lo que yo he escrito. Bueno, 4x4 no es mi primera novela, pero sí es la primera novela que yo siento plenamente mía, y hace 8 o 9 años que la escribí. Es una novela que la escribí en 2011 y 2012. Digo que la siento cercana porque desarrollo ahí todo mi universo, tanto temático como formal, ¿no? Y son son cuestiones que han ido apareciendo en otros libros míos después. Temas como por ejemplo el poder, las relaciones entre los niños y los adultos, la libertad y el encierro, ¿no? tan actual hoy, ¿no? Y también algunas cuestiones formales, como digo, que ese uso del lenguaje un tanto seco y abrupto, ¿no? Y la elipsis. Esto tiene relación con las dos partes de la novela. Entre la primera y la segunda parte no solamente cambia el punto de vista, sino que hay un tiempo en medio, hay aproximadamente 1 año o 2 años de cosas que pasan en el college y que no sabemos. Y me parecía que el libro precisaba ese misterio, ¿no? Yo con 4x4 he aprendido luego a escribir como escribo. O sea, fue el libro donde por primera vez utilicé la herramienta que luego he seguido utilizando de distinta manera, porque hay una evolución en mi escritura, pero puede decirse que todo mi mundo está ya en este libro, ¿no? Y es un libro al que le sigo teniendo mucho, mucho cariño a pesar de todos estos años.
Oops, Katie, do you want to recap real quick just for anyone who doesn't know Spanish?
Yeah, it was a complex answer, but I'll hit a few of the highlights. What I can remember, since I had my daughter on my lap talking in my ear, but something that Sarah said that I think is really important, and that I mean, I've read all of your work, Sarah, and what you've just mentioned is that in 4x4 sort of like contains all the seeds for your other work, in the sense that so many of the themes, as you mentioned, the relationship between children and adults, structures of power, sort of that the underlying tension and unease that we might feel with other people, that there are things that we don't understand about how our relationship with other people is sort of developed, and what are those fundamentals. I think that it's so timely, and this is something I think that we'll talk about. I'm sure we'll talk about today, just the sort of the timeliness of this novel. For now, as we mentioned, sort of jokingly, about the feeling of isolation and of watching too much TV. And those things are a luxury. I feel kind of like uncomfortable joking too much about how isolated I feel when we have it pretty good. But yeah, that's sort of the summary, I think.
There was, why don't we talk about that? Because there's a forthcoming interview in Lit Hub that is a discussion between the two of you. And one of the things that you mentioned, or one of the questions that you asked Sarah about, was about how this book, the different times that you read it and have worked on it, applied to many different situations in the world. And it feels like it's always timely. And I wonder if you could sort of recap what you said. And then I'm curious if Sarah wants to respond to like why she thinks this book keeps having this relevance.
Sure. Yeah. So I mean, basically, the first time that I read the novel was sort of at the height of the early days of the border crisis, our current border crisis with Mexico, and it was right around the time that the press was talking about the detention centers and the idea of the children being kept in like cage-like facilities, and the horror of that. And for anyone who's read 4x4, that there are sort of connections, especially with the third part, which is much more metaphorical and allegorical exploration of what's going on in the college. So that was so resonant. And then I was translating it, and it was like the Jeffrey Epstein sex scandal. And again, there are themes in 4x4 related to power and to sex and to youth and power and to and that was like, that felt really resonant too. And then now, the book's coming out and we're isolated and we're talking about the importance of, staying safe and keeping distance and being disconnected from sort of the dangers outside. And I just felt like no matter what was going on, I was able to sort of connect it to my experience of working with 4x4. And so I asked Sara about that. I said, well, Sara, what is it about 4x4 that is so timely and prescient always? And Sara, if you want to answer in Spanish, you can, and I can talk a little bit about what you said.
Bueno, timeless es un adjetivo que me gusta para por supuesto, para lo que escribo, ¿no? Para la literatura que leo y la que creo que es más interesante precisamente es la que no caduca.
Yeah.
Yo no me atrevo a decir que 4x4 sea un libro aplicable a todo tiempo, ni a... no sé cuánto tiempo va a seguir vivo, pero sí soy consciente de que el libro sigue vivo. Lo cual, teniendo en cuenta que casi tiene una década, para mí es un honor, ¿no? Yo creo que esto sucede porque yo no escribo nunca demasiado pegada a la actualidad. Sí que creo que escribo sobre lo que observo y conozco, es decir, sobre mi mundo, no fantaseo. Pero las claves en las que me muevo, digamos, son algo más abstractas, de manera que son aplicables a diferentes situaciones. Por mencionar otro libro mío, Un incendio invisible, es una novela que cuando se publicó estábamos en la crisis, en España golpeó fuerte la crisis económica de 2008 y se interpretó como un libro sobre la crisis. Sin embargo, ahora me consta que alguna gente la está leyendo desde el punto de vista de la crisis, de la pandemia, del coronavirus, ¿no? No la escribí pensando en la crisis económica y tampoco la escribiría ahora nada sobre la crisis del coronavirus, pero los mecanismos mentales y psicológicos con los que actuamos, y esto que me interesa a mí del poder, por ejemplo, se puede aplicar a distintas circunstancias, ¿no? En fin, a mí me parece muy interesante y, como siempre digo, no me importa tanto que un libro falle estilísticamente, que no esté bien construido, que su lenguaje no sea excesivamente bello, que tenga errores incluso. Todo eso se puede perdonar, pero lo que no creo que no se puede perdonar es que un libro al poco de meses de leerlo ya no te diga nada, sea caduco, ¿no?
I think that's really interesting, the idea that, that what Sara's talking about, for those who don't speak Spanish, is the idea that she doesn't write, kind of holding too tightly to current events, to what's happening, right now. So it's timely in the sense that it's timely, I think, related to the themes, which are always timely, right? The idea of power, the idea of oppression, the idea of, again, those human relationships, sort of the darker side of some of our human nature, right? And that the fact that, as you said, Sara, like that the mental and the psychological mechanisms with which we react to reality and with which we interpret reality stay the same. And so that the situation, right, might change, but the way that human beings react to these various situations can be very, very similar. So for example, you mentioned An Invisible Fire, one of your, I don't know if that was your first novel. Fue la primera novela, ¿no?
No, la segunda. Hay mucho por ahí.
Okay, so the second, her second novel, and that book is very much related to 4x4 as well. They take place in the same world, but the idea that people read it back in the day, right, when you wrote it, they read it as sort of a treatise or an exploration of the financial crisis in Spain, which was truly devastating, like it was all over the world, but Spain is just barely recovering from it and will be suffering again from this current crisis. And that now people are reading the book, and they mentioned to you that they can read it with an eye toward this pandemic. And so, it's very interesting to think about the fact that these novels, again, they feel timely because the themes are kind of present in the human experience always in a cyclical way.
our initial sales pitch for this when we were, or like our elevator pitch for booksellers and reviewers and everything was that Shirley Jackson meets Jeffrey Epstein, which sounds so out of now. And it should be Shirley Jackson meets COVID would be our new elevator pitch. Okay, we're gonna open this up to questions in a few minutes, but I first want to ask, I'll ask one last question to you, Katie, since you, as a translator, I want to get your perspective. But how did you come to translate the book, and how did you come to Sara's work, and what, as a translator, makes it very interesting, challenging, enjoyable to work on her writing?
So thank you for that question. When I first started thinking about trying to break into literary translation, like for money instead of just for my own hobby, I knew that I wanted to work with Peninsular Spanish literature, and I really wanted to work with female writers. And I was interested in people sort of my generation. And so I started to do research on what was out there, what was happening. I was still living in the US at the time. And so there were a few writers on my radar, and I got some really good advice about who to read. And the first book that I bought of that batch was Mala Letra, which is Sara's collection of short stories from 2016. And I was totally just like enraptured by those stories. They're so beautiful, and they're so like painful to read in a way. And there's a lot in there about adolescence and about the relationship between children and adults, and about power even within families and within neighborhoods and relationships, in a way that was so just sort of like sharply and simply told, but like really, really impactful. And so I started working on some of those stories. And then as the more I learned about the translation world, the more I realized that like you can't really be trying to shop around a short story collection. You can, but you can, and we're gonna do it, but it wasn't necessarily going to be the first project that would get picked up. And so I dove into the novels, and 4x4 was where I started, and was very, very lucky to have Open Letter take such an interest right away. But Sara's work I've read everything. I love, love, love Sara's fiction. I think that there's such a cool vision, I mean cold vision of the world that sort of like distills everything down in this really simple, this deceptively simple language and way of writing. And I think that kind of unadorned writing really, really doesn't, like Sara in our interview for Lit Hub, I loved what you said about, there's almost like, there's no consolation or comfort in language that's bare. And what I said, and how I look at it as a translator, is that there's nowhere to hide as a translator, because you can't just like be adding words in and fudging and, you put another clause in or another description. You have to be so economical and concise with Sara's language that I ended up revising and having to pare down so much, because with that first pass, you're just trying to get the sense of what she's saying. But the style is so crystal clear that was a real challenge. It was harder in a way to work with that really simple and ordinary language to make something as beautiful as Sara makes with her literature. That was more complicated, I think, than doing something that was really, sort of flowery or, lots of metaphors and lots of, difficult words, or, with that, you can play more. And with Sara's work, you have to be concise, and you have to be sharp. And it was an incredible challenge, and I can't wait to do more. I love it.
You did a fantastic job with it. I'll say, as the publisher, I think you did a spectacular job, and everything you're saying rings really true, because I read the first draft and then ensuing ones, and as you got it more and more crystalline, it became more and more powerful, and it's such a powerful piece of writing. Even that third section especially is really, really amazing. I'd love to talk about our weird translation bit with that third part, but we'll save that for a different event. but there's a secret cool trend for all you translation geeks who are watching. There's a really interesting thing that happened with the third part related to the translation of a book from German into Spanish versus German into English, but I'm just going to tease that. Y'all have to find out at some other event. The last thing I'm going to say before we open up to questions is that we do at Open Letter and 3%, we do a weekly podcast called the 2-Month Review, where we generally take one giant book and read it section by section and talk about it each week as if it were like an ongoing TV show. We recap it, we make a lot of jokes, and have a lot of fun. And because there's a number of books by Spanish female writers translated by females that are coming out right during this crisis that I feel bad for, we decided that the next season of the 2-Month Review will feature Cars on Fire by Monica Ramon Rios, 4x4 by Sara Mesa, and then the Book of Anna by Carmen Bellosa, which is available from Coffee House. So those, if you can click below and buy 4x4, but you should also buy those other two books and join us. We broadcast live every Wednesday, and the podcast is available on all your normal places, and it's called the 2-Month Review, and it'd be great to read along, for all of you to read along with us on 4x4. But with that said, Caitlin, do you want to come back on and lead us through some audience questions? Or this is where I have to vamp for a while, huh? Hey guys, I'll tell the story quickly. The short, because there's a long version of this, but there's a quote from Canetti in the third section of this book. And the section of the book was always called Heroes and Mercenaries. And there's a quote from the book in here that refers to heroes and mercenaries. And when we were doing the final proofreading, I Googled it to try and find that quote to make sure that we hadn't screwed anything up. And I couldn't find it. There's one translation into English of this book, Crowds in Power, and the translation is very different from what we had in here originally. And it was actually heroes and soldiers, not mercenaries. So as it turned out, the book translated into Spanish used mercenaries, whereas it didn't in English. And so we had this long debate over whether to go with what the English one that's already been translated is, which would require us to change a bunch of parts of the text so it'd be heroes and soldiers. But we decided that politically, heroes and mercenaries both sounded better, but was also more politically apt. So the translation of that quote in here is actually an amalgam that I wrote of Katie's translation and the original translation and merged them into one so we could keep heroes and mercenaries but get some of the other parts in there as well. So it's a little hidden gem. And there's another poem in here that Katie translated that's also been translated into English, and it's not the same as that. So that's our fun little translation geek trivia for you.
Hi, I'm Abby from the Loft. To those of you watching, I think Caitlin's screen is frozen, so I'm going to jump in here and do the audience Q&A, unless she can get her screen back up and perhaps join us midway through. So thanks for bearing with us on technical difficulties. This first question from the audience is for both Sara and Katie. How closely do you two work together when translating the work to make sure that the translation is holding up to the integrity of the original text?
Katy, tradúceme la pregunta, por favor.
I have to unmute myself. Sara, aquí nos están preguntando
¿Cómo trabajamos juntos?
¿Cómo trabajamos juntos o si trabajamos estrechamente juntos o cómo hemos desarrollado eso. ¿Quieres que conteste yo al principio y luego tú o tú?
Yo solo digo una cosa muy breve, ¿no? Que ha sido un placer trabajar contigo. El proceso lo puedes explicar tú mejor. Es un placer trabajar contigo por el entusiasmo y la profesionalidad. Y no todo tengo traducciones a muchos idiomas, ¿no? Pero no todas las experiencias son iguales.
Thank you. Well, I don't want to translate that because it would be tooting my own horn. But Sara has enjoyed working with me for my professionalism and my enthusiasm. No, but it has been great. Sara actually is really wonderful to work with. And all the writers I've been working with have been fantastic because they're very much hands-off, which has been kind of nice. I think that there's a level of sort of like trust and good vibes and energy that we've been able to develop so that when I've had difficulties or questions or like a sticky part of the text, we work on email. We've met in person too, but we work on email and I get my questions answered and that's been great. The experience of a translator, it depends on who you're working with, both ways, right? How the experience goes. And in terms of this is that's a very important question. The writer of the question brought up the idea of the integrity of the original and the translation and how we would collaborate on that. And what I'd say about that for me and in this process, it was that first pass that I talked about that I had to revise and revise and revise, that first pass is usually pretty faithful, sort of quite literally to the original. At least this is my process. So I felt pretty confident that I was doing a good job with getting Sarah's words in Spanish onto the page in English. And then the work really starts where you have to make this thing in English another distinct work of art and another artifact and another art object, no? And so I kind of, once I have a pretty good feeling that I've done a good job with that initial connection to the original, I tend to move kind of not far from the original, but just.
Uh-oh.
Maybe did I hear it coming back?
Oh.
We might have lost Katie too.
I can fill in a bit there in relation to that too. So she's saying like moving away and getting it into English. There were like various stages to the discussion about this translation and about the book itself that went from that literal part to what she's talking about of getting it like not smoothed out because we don't want to like disrupt, but the same style as the original, but in the way that it was working in English and honing that down. There's certain like syntax things that you play around with, different ways that we were able to make it like much crisper and sharper. But then there was a third level, and I actually wrote a post about this. It was inspired by this editing process for 3% about levels of translation. And there's a third level in which the translator plays a role as an interpreter, and that every translation is essentially that translator's interpretation of that book. And on that level, by the time we went through the book, like the third or fourth time, Katie was picking up on a lot of different like networked symbols and patterns that were in the original and in the text now that might have just been subconscious. But once you started picking up on them, able to like reinforce them in various ways and make sure that the book had all these resonances throughout it. And so it became a level of going from the literal translation into this world of like, what is the best piece of art that's being made here? And that's why like they spent a lot of time on it because it started to feel like we're getting to a point that's really like spectacular. And then that's where, I say we, but really I mean her. I just like, I get prompts. I'm like, oh, maybe this sounds a little bit weird, and then she rewrites it, so.
Perfect. And actually that leads into another audience question, which is how long does the whole translation process take to go through all of those different rounds?
For this one, this is very weird. So for this particular book, it came in last spring. We usually, and this is fairly common process for ours, we'll get a book about a year before it's published, the initial draft of the finished translation, get about a year before the book's going to come out. And then we edit it. Then it goes through, we edit it, give it back to the translator goes over it, they give it back to us, we proof it, we have it laid out and designed and everything. This one maybe took a little bit longer because there was a sort of funny story where when we were working on this, I read the book last spring, it would have been probably like March or something, and had given Katie a first round of edits. And then I was telling her that like, it's really hard to write the jacket copy for this because it's so dark. Like it's so dark and there's not a lot of like light to like be like, hey guys, this is a cool book. Why don't you do you want to read about like some sort of like, scandalous abuse situations? Like this is a book for you. But we wanted that's a hard jacket copy. So she's like, her response was like, well, you know, the second section's really funny. And I was like, I don't know if I'd say funny. And that was when we sort of realized that like the pomposity and the way that his voice wasn't quite there. So we went through and did that round 2. And the finished version of this was done by November of last year. So it was basically like a 6-month process, but that's exceptionally long. But she had worked on it probably for a few months before that. So more or less 9 months to a year for the translation. There she is. Okay.
Yay, Katie's back.
Sorry.
That's all right.
My phone died and I'm in the village with no internet on the computer. And anyway, I'm really sorry.
You're back. That's just fine. We had a couple of questions without you, but I'm glad you made it back in.
Okay.
Perfect.
I'm ready.
Well timed, actually. So, because this next question is for Sara. Quite a few people are asking about some of your favorite authors and who might influence your work or whose work you respect in conversation with.
Es la pregunta sobre autores que me influyen a mí.
Sí, o que te gustan o cuáles son tus escritores, no, de cabecera, ¿no?
Ya, bueno, a ver, complicado. Mira, esa pregunta la hacen siempre y no me la sé. Yo no sé decir qué me influye, es imposible que un escritor sepa qué le influye en su obra. Sé lo que me gusta, ¿no? La tradición a la que me siento cercana es una tradición que tiene mucho que ver con, por así decirlo, el absurdo, ¿no? Esa tradición que parte desde Kafka y pasa por Beckett, pero que también está matizada con voces de mi tradición en España, ¿no? Como podrían ser Ramón María del Valle Inclán, ¿no? Que describen situaciones reales, pero desde un ángulo como si las cogieras con una lupa y se deformaran, ¿no? Esa tradición me siento que me es muy cercana, ¿no? Pero leo tantas cosas, me gustan tantas cosas, qué sé yo, que se queda en cada libro, ¿no?
So I think people probably heard the names that she mentioned from Kafka and Beckett and in Valle Inclán, who's the Spaniard. But I think one of the most interesting things about Sara's answer for those who don't speak Spanish is that the interest of these writers in looking at reality, but from a different angle, like as if you had like a magnifying glass that you were looking at that sort of deformed what you were observing. And I think that that's something that at least stylistically might, have influenced sort of that, that way of writing about sort of real things, real situations. It's almost done, so there you go. She's asking about my lipstick, why it's almost gone. And it's almost gone because I found it all over her face right before we got on the call, as well as a puddle of urine. So that was why I was.
Perfect.
So it's been really great. So yes, there. So Sara reads so much. She has no idea what could possibly find its way filtering into her work.
Great.
I'm going to ask a follow-up question. Sara, have you read Shirley Jackson's early novels?
Shirley Jackson. Leí una novela que se llamaba algo así como Nunca saldremos del castillo.
Yeah. The castle. What's the castle one?
We've always lived
in the castle.
Buenísimo.
Because Hangs a Man and The Sundial are so they're like, I started reading them because one of our interns read 4x4 and was like, this reminds me a lot of Hangs a Man. And I was like, I've never heard of these early Shirley Jackson novels. And I went and read that and then devoured The Sundial. And it did remind me a lot of of your work and the tone and like what you say about the magnifying glass. Like her sort of early books, like take things and like twist them. And they seem like they're one thing on the surface. And then it like jerks somewhere else and like surprising things happen. And that sort of fits with this too, where a lot of stuff happens off screen. Like one of the things about 4x4 that makes it really interesting is that it is a dark and in a way violent and scary book, but most all of that happens off screen. So like you're not face to face with that, and that makes it more haunting. And it's more like the insinuations and the way that the reader is like assuming things and figuring things out is much more powerful than being like blatantly on the page. And that reminds me of Shirley Jackson too, because a lot of stuff happens between the lines or between the breaks in her work as well.
También relacionaron 4x4 con esta escritora suiza, italiano-suiza, que es Fleur Jaegui. No sé si la conocéis. Bueno, si no la conocéis.
Fleur Jaegui.
Fleur Jaegui.
Yes, right, Chad?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Es una novela que está en un internado y tiene esa atmósfera de la que está hablando Chad ahora, ¿no? De lo que no se ve, que a veces es mucho más escalofriante. Y sí siento ese vínculo con esta escritora también. ¿Qué tour nos está haciendo por tu casa?
I'm trying to escape Sylvia, who's playing her Let It Go birthday card. Like,
oh my gosh.
She's just, I'm trying to escape my 3-year-old. I'm so sorry. She's like right up behind me wherever I go, and it's Let It Go.
Perfect.
So. I'm really trying to be professional here. This is my debut.
And, it's part of the charm of working from home, I think. We wouldn't get this at a live event.
No.
This is perfect. Well, I think that might be all we have time for anyway.
Okay.
So I want to say thank you so much to Chad, Sarah, Katie for joining us today. Thank you to the audience for tuning in, for bearing with technical difficulties and Let It Go birthday cards. We were so lucky to be in conversation with you all today. You can order your copy of 4x4 at the button below. I certainly am really excited to get my hands on it, especially after this conversation. You can also support the Loft and the Loft programming similar to this one, also at the button below. Thanks again to presenting sponsors St. Catherine University and Star Tribune for supporting virtual wordplay. Have a great day, everybody. Thanks so much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, Sarah. Thanks, Chad.
Thanks.
Bye.